No. Well, since he's talking about survivors, I'll be back here. I'll stay on the way though.
You'll come in later? Okay.
Okay.
So, hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Tell me a little about yourself, your name, for everyone can kind of get a sense of what we are doing here today.
Sure. My name is Steve Snyder-Hill, and I live in Columbus, Ohio. And I retired from the military in 2019. I was in 1988 to 2019. Ended as a major in the military.
And were you on active duty somewhere during any of the wars and stuff?
Oh yeah, I have quite a story about that. So, in 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier, and I didn't want to lose my job. That I don't know if that phrase is kind of familiar to you, but at the Republican debate in 2010, I sent that to a YouTube video, and I got booed on national stage, and it became a big deal. It was President Obama talked about it. It was kind of a joke of the sitcoms and everything. HBO Newsroom did an episode about it. And there were a lot of things that actually led up to me asking that question. And this is all kind of pertinent to the story of OSU as well. But, when I was in Germany, I went to the Holocaust camps to Dachau. And I visited that when I was in my teens. And I remember one of the most profound moments is I walked in and saw a uniform that somebody wore that died. And that was profound to me. I took a picture of it. They had wooden shoes, and I just thought somebody died that wore this. That was more impactful to me than anything that I'd seen. I stuck the picture in a shoebox and forgot about it for years. And then in college, I came out and I was gay, and I didn't care who knew. Silence equals death. Homophobia is a social disease, all that stuff. And I pulled that picture out and I looked at it again and had a pink triangle on it. And that's when it ignited this activist in me. So Josh and I have traveled the country, and we've spoken about, what happened in Iraq and getting booed and everything, and kind of talked about.
And just to repeat it again, you got booed for saying what?
What I said to the audience was that in 2010, when I was deployed to Iraq, I had to lie about who I was because I'm a gay soldier and I didn't want to lose my job. Under one of your presidencies, do you intend to circumvent the progress that's been made for gay and lesbian soldiers in the military? It's funny, I've got that memorized. But anyway, so I got booed, and it became a big deal. I got on HBO Newsroom and all this stuff. And so ironically, OSU reached out to me, and they wanted to celebrate me, and they asked me to come back and speak about that because they wanted to use it in a TED talk that was called The Human Narrative. And it was trust the power of your voice, because I've written a book about my experiences and what like going through the military and being gay. And so OSU celebrated me. I went and did this, and it was in front of 4,000 people, got a standing ovation. It was wonderful, using the power of your voice to evoke change.
So OSU's meaning?
Ohio State University.
Okay.
So that was my alma mater. That's where I went to college. I got my master's degree there. That's where I came out. There's a lot of fond memories of OSU. And so while I was at OSU, so the dark stuff that happened was that one quarter I didn't have insurance, and then the next quarter I would have insurance. So I was kind of a broke college student. So I would get stuff looked at if I had insurance or if I didn't. And this particular quarter was one of the quarters I decided to spring and pay for my college insurance. And I had a lump on my chest, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. So I decided that I was going to go in and have it looked at. And so they assigned me to Dr. Strauss, and I went in, not thinking anything, and came in and just had this awful experience. Like, it started to seem creepy because, I was younger, and I don't know if I was described it I don't know if I described myself as like a younger, attractive kid or whatever. And Strauss kind of came in and looked me up and down and was like asking me weird questions that I thought were weird. I was gay. I was not out. Like, I was out, but I wasn't really like, I don't know. At that point, this was before I got the silence equals death and came out like that. But I was out enough to not be like closeted or whatever. And Strauss starts asking me all these weird questions about like, are you gay? And I was like, why are you asking me that? And I was like, whatever. And so I said, I don't know. That's how I answered him. I don't know, because it was kind of like I didn't know why he asked. And so then he started asking really weird questions like, you know, you have a hard time sleeping with one person, and like just kind of creepy, like that I felt like he was getting creepy or whatever. And so he proceeded, you know, I don't know how much detail you want in this, but he proceeded to do some really inappropriate examinations, rectal, anal, genital, no gloves. Like you've heard the stories from hundreds of people. When it was the epitome of this was that he laid me down on a table to check my chest. I mean, he had me, I was completely naked. He had me, and he did all this stuff and all these exams. And I'm like, dude, I'm here to check my chest. Like, I don't understand.
Right.
But you're a doctor. You know, you don't argue with the doctor, right? And so I lay down on this table and he starts to look at my chest and he's feeling it. And he's intentionally kind of pushing his crotch against me, and he has an erection and I can feel it. And I froze and I was like, you know, the hardest thing is to try to describe to people. Everybody always asks, why didn't you do something? Like, what? Like, you could have kicked that guy's ass. He wasn't that big of a guy. Like, why didn't you do something? Why did you, you know, act differently? And I'm telling you, it's the best way to describe it is if you get in a car wreck and it's just a disastrous wreck, and somebody's like, why didn't you do this when you were steering out of that car wreck or whatever? You can't control that. Like, you can't control this situation. You aren't expecting it. You're just like frozen. You know, I mean, I was frozen at that moment.
I mean, unless you're in that situation, I can't imagine anyone can tell you what you're supposed to do, you know.
Right.
And the doctor has more power in that situation, and you know, it's one of these live and learn things, I guess. So that was you. What grade were you in then?
So I was in college. I mean, I would have been 1995. I would have been 25 years old because I had been in the military and been out. I'd gone to one war at that point. Right. So that wasn't the booing part. That was the war before in Desert Storm. So I'm a two tour Iraq vet. So went through the Strauss thing and I was pissed. I was like, after I got out of it, I basically then came out. I was like, I am gay and I have a boyfriend, and in my brain, I'm trying to think of anything I can to get out of that moment. And I was like, I think that if I tell him that I'm gay, then if he's one of these creepy old gay men that just is like thinking that he's going to try to take advantage of me because I'm uncomfortable, maybe that'll get me out of it. And I was literally trying to figure out how to get out of the situation. So I did get out of it, and I got pissed, and I called OSU the very next day. So my story, this is where it veers from a lot of the other survivors, because I called them the very next day. I was pissed. And I said, you know, this guy did this to me and it was gross, and I want to report it. And so I sent the report in, and Ted Grace, well, I sent the report in to Judy Brady. She listened to it all, wrote it down. Ted Grace was their medical doctor. He was Strauss's boss's boss. He calls me back and he's like, you know, I've talked to Dr. Strauss. He's denying everything, you know, and I've heard what you said or whatever. We went through the whole thing. And so I basically said, you know, he told me to believe Strauss. He didn't believe me. And I was like, that's bullshit. And I was pissed off. And he was like, well, he's like, how about if you come in here and we'll meet about this? So then I go in, I took the person that I was dating at the time, go in for a meeting with Strauss. It's me, two doctors, two medical doctors. It's Strauss and Louise Dowse, who's a psychiatrist, and Ted Grace. So two medical doctors and psychologists, and me, like little me student, and my boyfriend. And so we start going through all the details, and I'm like telling them everything that happened. And as we're doing it, Strauss is nice at first, real like charismatic and real like, you know, introduces himself to my boyfriend and all this stuff. And as we start going through the details, he's kind of like slowly like, yeah, well, I did that. I asked him that because of this, and he's justifying a lot of it. And then we got to where I said the erection, and he slammed his hand down on the table. And he's like, "You're trying to ruin my reputation!" And he's screaming at me. And it was just really bizarre. And like I froze, and I looked at the two the two doctors, and I'm like, you guys, like, this is your show now. I don't know what to do. And I'll never forget, Dr. Louise Dowse stood up and she looked me in the eye and she said, well, it appears that you're confused and mistaken about what had happened to you. Yeah. And I was pissed. And so that Ted Grace calls me back the next day, and I'm like, I'm mad. I don't like what happened. And I said, he's that Strauss's boss's boss. He's a medical doctor. He called me back and said, how can I make this right, Steve? Now, this is an important part, because this is where OSU gets really screwed, because I said, you can make this right by assuring me that this has never happened before. Like, I need to know that. If you believe him and you're telling me I was confused and mistaken, and then I'm starting to doubt. I'm like, well, maybe I felt a cell phone in his pocket, or maybe he had something in his pocket that I was feeling him push against me or whatever. And you're doubting yourself, right? And so I'm basically like, if you can promise me that this has never happened before, then that's one thing. Number two, I want you to document it in this file. So if it ever happens again, then you won't be able to bullshit anybody. And number three, if it happens again, I want you to call me. That's what I said. And we talked about them changing the forms and stuff. And he said on the phone, that sounds great. I can do all that. And so I said to him, great, put it in a letter to me. And when I said that, there was silence on the end of the phone. Now, here's the beautiful part. To date, that's the only letter that any survivor has that proved that OSU lied to us. Because I found out 24 years later that letter that he sent me, that he said we've never had a complaint against Dr. Strauss, we've only had positive comments. I found out 24 years later that a kid complained just 2 days before me. Just 2 days. Wow. And that guy looked me in the eye and lied to me. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, OSU can't be surprised that I'm pissed off about all this, because honestly, like, I'm one of the 2 kids that got rid of Strauss. Because after that, what happened after my meeting that I didn't know until 24 years later, because I went home and lived the rest of my life and never knew differently until I saw his face on TV in 2018. So that's my belief. That's what I thought happened. But what happened in actuality that I find out 24 years later was that a year passed when that happened to me, and he had already written that letter to me. So he's in trouble now, because now he's put a letter out saying if it happens again and all this stuff, and he didn't document that first kid. Well, 6 months after me, he wrote a performance appraisal and gave Strauss a excellent on the performance appraisal after he'd molested 2 kids and they reported it and he knew it and then lied to me about it, gave him an excellent. And then a year after me is when the 3rd kid got molested and went apeshit. He knocked stuff over in the waiting room, tore up his medical records. And Grace knew at that point he was screwed, because he knew that if I found out, then all the stuff before him would come out. And they put Strauss on medical leave and attacked him. And then Strauss, talk about arrogance, Strauss got pissed because they put him on medical leave and filed a medical board complaint in Ohio against Grace, his boss, and said he tried to make him fraudulently change his documentation. And then while the medical board's investigating that, they're like, wait a minute, this guy's molesting people. Like, you guys knew that? So then the medical board tells OSU, we want you to make a medical board complaint against them for molesting kids. And then OSU responds to them, we want you to keep this confidential until we get this investigation done. So this is the stuff, like, even that medical board stuff, that hasn't been reported in the news. That's like clear as day. It's in the documentation. Hasn't been reported. And that's a clear sign of cover up from OSU.
So when did you find out that there were, how many cases are going against him at this point? Like, how many complaints has he had? So
I think that the last number that we saw that OSU released on their clergy report was 2,439 instances of rape or sexual assault.
Get out of here.
Yeah, 2,000 instances, and then that's over hundreds of guys. And some of those instances are—
And over how many years is that?
20 some years. He was there in 1978, and then they let him retire in 2000.
With his pension or whatever?
Oh, not only with his pension, they gave him an emeritus status. So they gave him like an elevated status.
So the case that so tell me about the case.
So basically what happened was that there's several lawsuits against him. I'm in one group that is not a class action, we're like a mass action. And the difference between them is class action, everybody sues the exact same way. Mass action, they say everybody has a different story, right? And so there were 512 people that sued OSU. In Perkins Coie, the report, or the independent investigation, and whenever I do this, that's OSU bullshit speak, but their independent investigation, which are basically attorneys that they hired for a public release. That's what it was. I mean, I'll tell you when I'm speculating. This is speculation. I think that OSU probably, when this came out, they probably went to lawyers and they said, hey, you're good with statute of limitations. They don't have a defense. They can't do anything. And they said, but shit, this looks bad, right? And so they knew right from the beginning, all this documentation was there, and they knew that they would have to break to the public how bad this looked. So the only thing that they could do is, hey, if we pay $6 million and do this investigation, then we could say that we uncovered Strauss's abuse, which is false. They say that all the time, but it's a lie. A whistleblower uncovered Strauss's abuse.
So you've launched this website now this week, yes?
Yeah. So
And
survivors.
who are you getting any reaction to it? Are people going to it?
Well, first it's survivorsofosu.com to make sure everybody goes to it. But we are getting it came out on the news. It started as that we tried to do a billboard, and in Ohio there's some shady stuff. So I gave you the story about Strauss and the abuse. That's gross. Now you get the really gross stuff, and this is all the stuff that people are roasting Jim Jordan and everybody. All the really gross stuff that OSU of today is doing. So number one, right out the gate, when this whistleblower came forward, he said, give me any public records about Dr. Richard Strauss or sexual assault. This is a time that I didn't know about it. Like, I didn't know that anybody else had been abused. And OSU responded to them right out of the gate and said, there's no responsive records. Now, fast forward to today, and after the $6 million investigation that they said that they uncovered Strauss's abuse, they talk about thousands of documents that they turned over. And when he came forward, there were no responsive records. So that was the first lie on day one when this started.
Wow.
And then the next thing that they did was they put out a clean personnel file. So they basically told the public, hey, we're being transparent. Here's this guy's file. Not one documentation ended about sexual abuse. So all these survivors like us were out there saying, hey, he abused me. We needed people to believe us. And what did they do to counter that? They put out a clean personnel file, making us look like liars, and they let that sit for a year. And then the most insulting part is while they were doing that, that's when I was asking them for my documentation, because I knew that there was documentation that existed. And they were telling everybody there's nothing, that we don't have any proof. And I knew that there was proof, and I was fighting them for that proof. Then they went on to break the public records laws by making me wait 155 days for my documentation. They gave me a little bit, but they made me wait for most of it. All the stuff that told the really dirty stuff about them lying and everything. So they intentionally withheld all that documentation, let that clean record sit out there for an entire year, and then let the public doubt us. They did that. And then finally, in Ohio, they introduced legislation, House Bill 249, that would have allowed us to have our day in court. So that was great, right? So we're finally, they're going to override the statute of limitations and let us sue them. And we find out later, much later, that corrupt Ohio, with all of our great politicians here, like your Jim Jordan, I know he's the favorite of yours, but corrupt Ohio had no intention of that bill passing. There was never an intention of that. They just threw it out there as like some kind of a weird. Yeah. I don't. They say that it was to pressure OSU. I don't know what I believe, because OSU was in the background getting the bill killed, like that. They were working like feverishly to get that bill killed, and they put out a public statement saying it would be inappropriate for them to even have a stance on that bill. That's what these people are. They're just gross.
So there's no recourse for suing him or getting him to court because it's all, after the 7-year kind of.
Well, so here's the thing: is that in Ohio, it's 2 years to sue somebody. Strauss killed himself. I don't know if you know that, in 2005. He actually, yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he hung himself in 2005. Now here's the great thing. Well, I mean, not great. But
wait, 2005, and when was your incident?
1995. So 10 years after. But I mean, 2005. But he'd been molesting kids from 78 to 95. But he killed himself, and the weird part was in the.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's bizarre. So he killed himself, hung himself.
So what's the documentary going to be about?
So, well, I mean, the documentary is going to tell all this stuff that I'm saying about OSU, about how dirty that they are and trying to do this. What the lawsuit is about is that you have 2 years to sue somebody. So if your kid goes to Ohio State University and gets horribly raped, 2 years and 1 day, they could give you the middle finger and say, statute of limitations, you can't do anything. They can even pay $6 million and prove how badly you got raped. and they would say you can't do anything. That was OSU's defense against us, as they said, "It's too long, sorry." And then they even used our words against us, saying, "Oh, well, plaintiff A said that they had him rape them like this, and plaintiff B." So clearly they knew it was sexual assault, and they should have sued within that 2 years. That's been their defense. It's just been too long. That's it. And so the court initially, we have a lot. I mean, I could go on and on about the corruption here. So the court started out is that we had a judge that was assigned to our case. On day one, he said, "I need to disclose that I'm a professor at OSU. Does anybody have a problem with that?" And all the lawyers were thinking, you know what? If you're disclosing it, then we trust you. We think you'll be non-biased, just like a judge should be. And so we don't have an issue with it. What we didn't know at the time is that the judge did not tell us that his wife owns a flag store where she sells OSU merchandise. And that never came out until the news broke it later. And so then when that happened, and then they went on an OSU cruise while they're presiding over our case. And I have a picture of his wife doing a block O, the OSU block O, with her judge husband sitting beside her on a day that they actually made a ruling in our case. So when you talk about like with justice, it's like the appearance of impropriety. When you're somebody that needs justice and you look to that judge to be non-partial, you want to believe that there's nothing that influences them like being on a cruise.
Well, I mean, you are definitely not Jewish. That's what I'm telling you, whatever. I mean, A, trust no one. B, a judge. Have we not learned? I guess that was a while ago. Now that we see how corrupt our judicial system is.
Well, so and that's not all. So this judge basically goes through this whole thing. He sends us to mediation. Nothing happens. OSU just plays like they're just complete jerks this whole time, almost arrogantly. I mean, they tried to trademark V. But anyway, so it gets up to where the judge would not have oral arguments. He said no oral arguments. And then right up to the last part where he said that, you know what, because all this stuff came out in the news about his wife. So he got everybody together and said, "I don't even like the appearance of impropriety. Tell me if you would like me to recuse." He said that to the plaintiffs. And he said, "I also will offer you oral arguments," which earlier he said he wouldn't. So all of a sudden it was like, hey, if you leave me in this case, I'm going to give you oral arguments. It's like a carrot. And so many of the attorneys said you should recuse from the appearance of impropriety. So the next thing we knew, he ruled against us. He threw away the case. He didn't recuse, and he just threw us in the trash. And he did it in a way that he said, it was very interesting because he basically just scorned OSU and said, "There's no doubt that these plaintiffs have been harmed by this university. There's no doubt their role in this, but it's just been too long. So the legal system fails these plaintiffs." That's what he said. So we appealed it, and in the appeal, we won. The appeal basically.
When was that?
That was just last year. Yeah, September of last year. So the appeal.
Are your lawyers working on like a percentage to, what's that? When lawyers work on a hope that they're gonna have some kind of settlement and take whatever 35% or something?
Yeah, they got to pay the bills. They're going to take their.
No, but that's the deal. Yeah, they're doing okay.
Yeah. So the lawyers appealed, and of course, if it goes to an appellate thing, then their percentage does go up because it's a lot more work. But our lawyers did a fantastic job. They argued it, and basically they went into the court and they argued, we're not saying there's not a statute of limitations. What we're saying is that it doesn't start ticking until you find out OSU's role in it. And that's what the court listened to with Title IX cases. And that's a difference, because I'm not a lawyer, but from my understanding, Title IX cases, with whether it's an occurrence or a discovery rule, what that means is that does your time start ticking on the occurrence, meaning when he actually did it to you, or the discovery of when you knew he did it to you? And OSU kept claiming you knew he did it to you in 1995. But then the argument was, no, we didn't know that OSU was enabling this predator to do this and lying to people until 2018.
And when was this documentary starting? When did you get wind that they were doing this documentary? It was probably early last year is when they started saying that George Clooney was coming out with a documentary.
Now, full disclosure, you're getting the information nobody else has gotten. We were working with a documentary company before George Clooney's company came out. Even had a trailer.
Documentary, or these are the people?
Nope, totally different.
filming it?
Totally different documentary. And it was, they came out with a trailer that, I mean, if they don't pick up another documentary like that runs parallel to George's, the trailer was, it's hard to describe. It's like breathtaking because you're watching it and you're like, oh my God. Because the name of it just alone is just like, you're just like Jesus. But it was good. But I think when Clooney's documentary came in, you know, it pretty much pushed everything aside because they probably have a lot more notoriety and stuff. So
That's it. That's if the network lets it run. I mean, the politics at these streaming services are so iffy these days, you know, because they don't want to piss off just constituents. And, you know, I was just having a conversation with someone today about how the media is pigeonholing their audiences. It's kind of like the way MSNBC and Fox are, you know, it's like everything is being segmented based through media, you know.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see if they run that. But so there's two documentaries that kind of overlapping, or they did, and how's that working? Is one
well, so
sideline?
the first documentary they did a trailer and they were pitching it to like the Netflixes and stuff like that. They were in the process of that when Clooney's documentary.
Oh, okay, so that's been sidelined.
Yeah, so I don't know that it'll still happen.
Do you still do you know? But you know who those people are and whatever. In the event they need to revive it in case the Clooney thing doesn't happen.
Oh, absolutely. And I honestly think that if something did go, you know, south with the other one, they probably would.
Yeah, and so when will this come to? When will this be any kind of resolve? I mean, is it just going to languish in the courts for the next, like?
Well, OSU is intentionally drawing it out for 5 years. So I think that if they had their chance, I mean, I can tell you, this isn't a hypothetical. Like, we've gone through a pandemic. I mean, the pandemic was 2 years before it started, and here we are, it's almost over. And that's the whole time we've been suing them. One of my lawyers got brain cancer and died.
Right.
I mean, that's how long it's been. Like, that guy will never see what happened. That's how long that they've drawn this out. And I think that they would continue to draw it out for as long as they possibly could. I mean, they're wretched people. The stuff that they have done. I mean, it's like, if I had to define what gaslighting is, these people, the amount of crap that they've done in gaslighting us, it's disgusting. Like,
so is there like a dollar? So there's two cases. There's the 512 people in one case, and the other, like, so it's totally different agendas. And
well, we have it's actually more than two cases. There's several sets of lawyers and all took kind of different legal strategies. So it's kind of it's weird. It's a hodgepodge of a bunch of different people. But it was 512 initial plaintiffs. OSU settled with a couple hundred of them, and so about half of them are left.
So settled meaning made cash payments.
So this is now here's your gaslighting for you. So OSU announced to the court. They announced it wasn't a negotiation. It wasn't a we come together and talk about this. They announced their settlement program, which is fine. That if that was what it was, and they were just like, hey, here's our settlement program. We're going to do this. The judge told us that we needed to mediate. We're offering this, and that's what they did. They announced it to the court, and then I read it. So what this settlement program? You tell me what you would do. The settlement program tells you have to drop your lawsuits if you join it. If you enter into it, drop all your lawsuits. You can never sue us again. You can't know if you're going to get a settlement, and they made it clear at least 2 times in it that you might get 0.
Oh, so yeah.
Right there. Drop your lawsuits. You might get 0. You're not allowed to get any more investigative material. You cannot criticize the way we've handled this from 2018 on. You got that was the terms of this thing.
So how many lawyers are you dealing with? You personally?
So I have a group of 3 different sets of lawyers One,
and do you meet like monthly or every 3 months, or how does that work?
so I love my legal team. They give us updates monthly, but one of the groups of our legal team is public justice, and they're basically it's a firm that is just about public policy, and that's what they're nonprofit. So like they don't, my lawyer won't get money for this. Their firm making public policy change gets it, and they've had me go out and testify for.
Is there any way you could? I hate to sound like untrustworthy, which of course I am, but would this policy attorney group be taking money on the side? I mean, grift. Think of every Republican that you see in the news. That's what OASU sounds like to me.
Oh
So,
no, OSU 100%. I wouldn't trust them for anything. No, I love my legal team. There's an attorney here in Columbus. They're out of Washington, and I really honestly, they've had me do stuff that had nothing to do with OSU, but it's just about sexual assault in general. Testify to
that's
stuff
good.
like that.
That's good. But I mean, is this going to just go on and on till? I mean, is there no way to turn the sands of the hourglass upside down to say, look, they have 12 months to come up with a number and fuck off?
No, I think that this is
Should I
OSU's
call
strategy.
them?
Yeah, no, you go ahead. We actually, maybe if you want to, you can get on our website. You can email the OSU board. You can tell them to fuck off. I mean, there's a button for that. But no, they'll draw it out as long as they can. As a matter of fact, they lost the appeal. Then they said we don't buy that. So they asked for an en banc review, which means that the 3 judges that ruled against them, the en banc review, the entire court weighs in, and they all weigh in whether they would all like to hear the case and rule on it. They lost that because they only had like a couple judges that said, yeah, we would rehear it. And the majority, like 3 out of 16 judges said we would rehear it. So the court told them, no, F off. Like, we ruled, it's done. You lost. And they made it very clear. So now good old OSU, they're going to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court. Keep in mind, they're not standing on this like pedestal to die on because they think that they did something right. They're doing it like to fight us.
They're going to SCOTUS in Washington, D.C. with those 9 things that are in that SCOTUS?
Yeah, those 9 things.
And at what point will they decide whether they're taking the case or not?
We'll probably hear, I think that they're saying sometime, well, I mean, OSU said that we should hear sometime in April, but our attorneys were saying maybe more like June or July, whether they take it.
If they're even going to take it or not.
Yeah, the probability of them taking this case, number one, is like, I think that the percentage that I heard is like less than 1%. It's like 80 cases out of 6,000 that they take. And number two, they usually choose cases that have merit, meaning like if this was just as whether or not you should be able to sue under statute of limitations case, and that was the merit of the case, and it was just about a lawsuit, that'd be one thing. This is a university that covered it up for 20 years, broke public records law in 2018, secretly lobbied and killed bills, lied to the courts, lied to lawyers. Like they've done all this stuff. Typically, courts don't want to take up that kind of cause. That's not what they want to write law on. So we're pretty confident they won't take it, which means that then it goes back.
They'll throw it back to
all the way back to the beginning, and then we're starting where we started in 2018 with our litigation.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
So we're all the way back there.
So, wow, so then just awareness is pretty much all you want to have to deflect people from going to Ohio State University. I mean, what?
I mean, you know.
Like, what's the punishment here? If it's not going to be money, like what's going to make you guys happy in the short term?
I mean, we want public pressure on this university. We want them to stand up and say, what you're doing is sick. It's wrong. And they 100% they have had the choice to do everything that they've done. They've chosen to fight us. This is a defense that they didn't have to do. They could have just taken responsibility for it.
And the Jim Jordan piece of this, how does he just skating away? I mean, he's never been called into court at any point in all these years, even though he was implicated and is
Okay,
going to be implicated in that documentary.
So I know that many of the wrestlers are going to talk pretty freely about Jim Jordan. I mean, there's been a bunch of stuff. There's been Rux Helix and one of the coaches, basically behind the scenes, we hear what the survivors are saying. This guy made a video and he talked about how they knew about Strauss. They knew, and he admitted that. So they got him on camera saying that stuff. And then apparently what people say is that Jordan was calling him and saying, don't do that, like, you know, recant this stuff. And then all of a sudden this guy comes out and he's like, I don't know anything. And these wrestlers were like, that's bullshit. You've recorded saying you do know stuff.
Right.
And then some of the wrestlers claim that Jordan called him and he was groveling and saying, you know, you have to be on my side with this. And I believe every single one of them. But here's what I'll tell you about Jordan. He wasn't part of my story because I was at Student Health and I wasn't in the wrestling program. But Jordan, one of the documents that Strauss's lawyer wrote back in the 90s was to OSU. He was pissed because they were going after him in that trial after me. And one of the things he said, and I quote, he said, rumor and innuendo are rampant across the entire university campus in other universities about Dr. Strauss. So he was saying, you guys, like, this is ruining his reputation because you guys are talking about that. So if I had to face Jim Jordan eye to eye and say, and he looked me in the eye and said, I didn't know, I would say Strauss's lawyer in 1995 said that everybody. Right. So you tell me how your locker being right next to Strauss's as he would shower and then get dressed and see some hot guy walk in and get his clothes right back off and go shower again. You mean to tell me all that time, all those years that you were sitting beside him, you didn't know? That's bullshit. Nobody believes that.
And he acts like so gay himself anyway, Jim Jordan. And what about that rumor that him and his brother were selling bootleg OSU merch? Is there any truth to that? I don't know how I heard that somewhere along the way, but that guy I sent you that post, DeSabato, that guy.
So the thing about DeSabato, like when I first met him, well, I didn't know him. I've never known him, right? And so when this all happened, you know, they talked about him being the whistleblower, and the only thing I knew about him was what the media said. And oh my God, the media crucified him. He has bad credit. He has a chip on his shoulder. He sues OSU for everything. He hates them. He just has a vendetta against them and all this crazy stuff. And I was like, Jesus, this guy sounds crazy. That was my first impression. And then I talked to him, and over the years we've become friends. And I mean, I think Mike struggles because this has messed him up. This has been years, and they have completely assassinated his character. Like, I've watched them do it, and they continue to. So anything that I see that is out there, I know how OSU works in the gaslighting, and so I know Mike, and I think he's a good guy, and I think he has good intentions, and I know that he's hurting right now.
Yeah, that's intense. So what's then? I guess you just want as many people to just go to the website. We'll post it on here. And what else? What other objectives are there in the short term? Since you're waiting for it to go to the Supreme Court, honey, those people, I wouldn't trust those people as far as I could throw them.
Well, I have to have faith in our legal system. I mean, honestly, our legal system failed us the first time, but then it came back and redeemed itself with the circuit court. So if our legal system works how I think it's supposed to work, I think that the Supreme Court won't hear this case because it's a terrible case. Like, they literally lied and covered this stuff up. And I think that, you know, I don't know what I want from this, because I honestly, it infuriates me to think what this university continues to do. And these people can turn off the lights at night and go home and feel good about themselves. Like, we ask every year to go speak to the Board of Trustees. Here's one example for you. Every year we say the survivors wants to address the decision makers. And we do that every year. Like the fourth year, I think I held up an email and said, I told you guys that you were breaking the law and you guys did nothing. And the court ruled in my favor and said, you broke public records law. So who pays for that? Who gets in trouble for that? And I said, the problem is nobody. So then the next year, when I made my request to come and speak to him after I would kind of raked him over the coals, I didn't get a response. They didn't respond to me. Like, survivors, we'd like to speak. Nothing comes back. And I'm like, don't not respond to me. And I get pissed and I'm like writing them back again. And then a reporter from the Associated Press has reached out to me and she said, Steve, did you guys cancel your request? And I was like, hell no, we didn't cancel our request. I'm pissed. They're not answering me. She said, OSU's telling me you guys canceled it. So then I went psychotic, got pissed off, and I just threw them under the bus, emailed them all, said, you guys better not be lying to the media. So I just recently did a public records request to get those records. And Ben Johnson, their spokesperson at OSU, wrote Cantelli Franco from the Associated Press. And he said, hey, Cantelli, we thought based on Mr. Snyder-Hill's last correspondence that his request was no longer active. So she said, really, Ben? She's like, can I see that request? And you know what liars do? He said, call me. You know why he did that, right? Keep that out of public record law.
Right.
Like anything that he's going to do, he's going to lie. He's not going to tell her. And I pulled up that correspondence and I posted it on Facebook where I'm pissed off because they're not responding. And I said, don't ignore us. Now, here's the best part. You want to define gaslighting? Their lawyer posted in one of his court filings, one of the healing things that OSU's done for survivors is they let them speak to the board of trustees. So these guys are like fighting us, lying, and trying to derail us. And then this year, they just said, fuck you, we're not going to let you. So I don't know if I'm allowed to discuss. They said, we're not going to let you speak to us anymore. And then when the reporter said, did you tell Steve you're not going to let him speak? And they said, no, we're inviting people who haven't spoke before to speak. And then they said, and you can't come back next year to speak anymore because we're not going to hear from anybody unless you signed a settlement agreement, which has a gag order that you can't talk bad about them. And when lawyers pressed, or when the media pressed them on that, said, so did you say that they can't come back again? They're like, we're developing a new forum for people who have settled to be able to address the board. I mean, these people are disgusting. Like what Strauss did was gross. What they continue to do. I mean, I've written a book. Maybe I should tell you that. It's about 500 and some pages now because I'm taking you through exactly what it's like to be the survivor that went through this and fight this fight against a university and a state that's corrupt. And basically, it just walks you right through everything that I've gone through. And I can't see how anybody would read that and not think, Jesus Christ, it's not about sexual assault. It's about everything that they do to these people afterwards. I mean, that's the story anymore. And that's why we launched the website. So what we want is that we want to hurt OSU the worst way that we can. The one thing that we know about them, we don't know what makes them tick because they're gross. They're gross people. For them to say, our defense has just been too long. We don't know what makes them tick, but we know one thing that they don't want. They don't want us to talk about what they've done from 2018 on. So that's why we developed this website. So it has a nice timeline of every single thing that they've done from 2018
And is Associated Press posting anything about it?
I mean, all the media, it's all over the media. But the website has been on news coverage here. It's been on local news, and it's been covered on OSU's own Student Lantern website. So their own OSU newspaper covered it. And, you know, the thing that sucks is that kids at OSU today, the people that OSU are in charge of today, they don't agree with OSU. Like they were, when House Bill 249 came out, their undergraduate student government all voted unanimously to support our ability to sue OSU because they didn't like what OSU were doing to them. And quite frankly, they're right, because you know what OSU is doing to us right now, they would do to the kids that they're over right now.
Is there an on-campus gay and lesbian organization?
Oh yeah, there have always been.
Are you in touch with them?
I mean, we haven't reached out to student organizations. Maybe that's the next thing that we need to
I would recommend that you do that with the website, even though it's like in there or whatever. I would make a specific point about reaching out to make sure they're aware of it, and maybe they'll put, maybe they have their own social media network that they can connect with, and within the university structures around the country, like I think it needs to be a little bit more grassroots. You cannot rely on the courts. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know that we totally are. I
And
think
the lawyers, look, lawyers, I'm sure, you know, they mean well, but for the most part, they don't have a horrible reputation for nothing. You know, and whether they're doing pro bono or whatever else, I'm telling you, this, since you're kind of in this circular motion until it gets through the bounces back from the Supreme Court, while it's being waited for the Supreme Court, that's an interesting story for the university and for young people. But that's where that's where you need to connect it, especially with all the backlash gay organizations are getting on college campuses. I mean, I think, and you know, I'm always right, so to ask anybody, but I think that that's, while you're in this, you're kind of in a holding pattern. You're kind of in a holding pattern now in terms of forward movement of the case in either direction. But while these kids are still in school, I say that's where you need to just do some outreach.
we the survivor, I have organized the survivors, and I'm giving them their voice, and we go out and we do protests. And I think that you suggesting that to me, Abe, is I laugh inside, because I think that OSU would probably be like, Jesus Christ, do not tell that guy any ideas about what else to do, because I from day one I sued them in court of claims. I won. I did that pro se. And you know the funny thing, I didn't know what pro se meant. It means to represent yourself. I had to Google that, and I ripped them apart. If you get on the website that we have and look at the public records, read my filing, because I tear them apart in all their defenses. Because you know what they said? You were talking about gaslighting. They said, you know, Mr. Snyder-Hill, when he asked for his records, we didn't want to give them to him because we didn't want to traumatize him. We didn't want to cause a chilling effect that might make other survivors not want to come forward.
So they were patronizing you.
Oh my God. And then they said they didn't want to piecemeal release information because that might hurt the case. But they didn't give a shit about piecemeal releasing this personnel file that made us look like liars. So you talk about gaslighting, and these people are just disgusting. It's like,
yeah,
like I don't know. And so from day one, I've not given them an inch. Like I fight them.
That's my first takeaway, though. I think you need to reach out to the, you know, is there, you know, whatever the group, the gay and lesbian group is, because those are your allies, you know, and you need the young people, especially because now you're an old man.
No, you're fine. Hey, you got a following, so that's what.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to share this for sure, and I'll post it on YouTube, and I'll do a bit for TikTok. But I think the grassroots part of this is in your own backyard is always going to be a good thing to add to the outreach.
One thing,
yeah.
Real quick. Just I think one thing, Abe, real quick. Hey, how are you? If you could ask him again, because I think this is one thing you didn't call to action. When people go to the website, what can they do? There's a way to directly email the board, because the one thing, Abe, is the board can decide to stop this. And like, don't put this part on there with me saying it out loud to you.
Wait, this board to stop what?
The case. The board, the university can decide to come to the table with the survivors. They technically have only indicated to the Sixth Circuit Court that they're taking it to Supreme Court. They haven't officially petitioned to do it. The board could right now say, stop and make this right. And so what we did is on the website, there's a button that you can push, and literally it opens up your inbox and it calls on the board to do the right thing. If there was a chance that this went viral and they started getting hundreds of thousands of emails on a regular basis to the board would be, that's it, it's too public. Because the problem right now is they're winning the PR game.
Right, no, exactly, which is why I'm saying, because this thing is languishing in this kind of nebulous SCOTUS thing, that's a delay tactic. So the fact remains is that also impacts your ability to get press.
Right.
You know, because there's nothing urgent, which is why I'm telling you guys, you've got to reach out to the university. I'll do my part, but I'm telling you, you need them. They're liberal. you know what I mean? You need the ones that are like on social media that are like horrified as to the way gay and lesbian are being treated in schools. So that would be a thing. I mean, I don't know how effective it's going to be. I have a list that I'll send out some information to through my email, through my direct mail program, but it's college blogs. But again, there's no guarantee that they're going to pick it up.
Right.
But that happens to coincidentally be something that I pulled a couple of years ago. So probably a lot of it won't necessarily be relevant. I'll happily do that. I'll take some of the text and some of the stuff from this. But yeah, it's in your own backyard. How far do you live from OSU?
like
Minutes.
Yeah, just 5 miles.
I used to work on the campus. It took me 7 minutes to get there.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you have to track that down. That's a priority.
Yeah.
You know that when Josh worked for OSU, when this all broke, he went to them and said, "Hey, my husband's involved in this. Just want you to know he has paperwork." And that investigative firm told him that they had some. And she's like, "They did?" Because he worked for OSU, he worked for HR. All of a sudden, he gets a random text, and it said that's his spouse. Because I've been booed and all this stuff, and I don't know why she wrote that text. We don't know who she wrote it to, but she said, "Josh, is your spouse Stephen Hill?" And she misspelled my name. We didn't think about it. And she said, "I'm just curious, did he find his written letter of complaint?" She was curious about that while they had that clean personnel file out before they were deciding to give me my file or not. And when they finally did give me my complaint, but kept all the stuff about them lying out of it, my name was misspelled on that complaint the same way it was misspelled on that email. So she had my paperwork sitting in front of her while she was asking if I'd found it yet, and not acknowledging that they had it in front of them and they were deciding whether to give it to me.
Yeah,
Thinking about whether to make it go away.
You're in a trust no one situation, which is why.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
But I will do that. I'll keep you posted. I'll let you know when it goes live. And I mean, yeah, just stay positive. I definitely think I want to know when you get in touch with that university thing.
I'm literally on the website right now.
Yeah, and also, you know what? Also, let's send out something to your list that you made on that initial horrible thing that happened, which will remain nameless right here.
Yeah, exactly.
That was such a fucking faux pas. Not on your part, honey.
No, I know.
On the politically correct fucking bullshit that this world better chill the fuck out about.
Yeah,
Period.
it's pretty crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Abe.
Yes.
Do you ever see Gary?
Gary who?
Gary, Carrie's dog.
Oh, no. I haven't. No, I mean, we had a off ending a year before she passed away. So yeah, that was bad. But we had 20 odd years of back and forth together, working and living and traveling, and yeah, things got bad at the end. But
that sucks. I'm sorry.
Well,
We just love Gary.
best assistant apparently got Gary.
I mean, my thing is like I love dogs, and we have a Frenchie, and so like dogs are it's dogs and then people for me always.
Gee, Josh, did you hear that?
I mean, he gets
it all the time.
I hear
it all the time.
He gets
no. Listen, I'm married, and my dogs come first, and he's always like, "Who you gonna kill first?" And I'm like, you.
Josh always gets sloppy seconds. I kiss the dogs every day before I go to work. And I always methodically kiss them all, and then I kiss Josh last
afterwards.
That's so funny.
So he gets sloppy seconds.
Right. All right. Well, this was good. I'm sorry that you're in like this quagmire of lies and bullshit, but
it's gonna make for a hell of a documentary.
Oh my God. Like the story isn't even about sexual assault anymore. It's corruption. Bullshit.
Corruption.
And I get why Jim Jordan's scared of this stuff. Because it's horrific. Like nobody can survive. I mean, I don't know in today's political environment.
So do you have any idea what the Clooney thing is focusing on?
So I know that I told them a lot of what I just told you, but in excruciating detail. And I know that all the survivors that talked to them talked about their experiences. There's a lot more than my part is the medical piece
I
of
don't
it.
know, but is the Jim Jordan part of that documentary? Do you know?
Well, I know that the all the wrestlers had experiences with him, and I know that they asked about it. So I do know that one part that kind of gets brushed under the rug that she asked me about that I think is important was the fact that Charlotte Reminick was one of the fencing coaches back then. And she's really a minority in this whole story because she's a female that was in charge of these fencers. And she stood up for them and said, this is bullshit. What this guy's doing to my fencers, I don't want him seeing them. And so when you look at Jim Jordan, manly man Jim Jordan, who wrestles and he's a tough ass and he's like, you know, in the media being just a bulldog of everything, that woman had, I don't know if it's appropriate to say balls of steel, but she literally didn't put up with the crap. And then Jordan, whose locker's right beside Strauss, he didn't do anything for these guys and now is denying it all. And she's passed by now. Like she died years ago, but she's the hero here. She didn't have a locker right beside his. And it took a strong female to get up and say, this is bullshit. Why Jordan's cowering away, not doing anything. But I think they'll tell it all. I really do. So what I'm allowed to say about the documentary is that it should be out by the end of the year. That's the target date for it. And they said that it's locked in. So I don't think we're gonna have any problem with it.
Good. I
mean, thank God we're out of Ohio, because if it was here, you know, you can't get anything to save your life here that's not corrupt.
Right.
So.
All right. Well, you be good now.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was a great meeting.
I'll keep you posted for sure.
Thank you.
Take care, Bob.